him this morning. I'm sure he'll be on. Oh, there he is. All right, so we're live. And yeah, we got Dan Vazquez in again. My dad's out of town. Dan's starting to become more of a part of the show. We've been talking about ways that he could help produce it and just kind of beef it up a little bit. But
bring him on to Odell. Lots of Vaz future plans here.
Let's bring him in.
But yeah, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Yesterday was obviously a big day where the market opened up really, really bad and then slowly just started coming back. Kind of seems like there were some people that got the earnings of the big mega cap before they released them. Because when you look at the way that the market moved, there's no doubt that there was some big money that knew something about the earnings. You know, Facebook, Apple, they all started to slowly turn positive at around 10, 11 a.m. And then, you know, they absolutely dominated their earnings. There's no other way to put it. I think they reinforced to the world how dominant big tech is and how this pandemic, they were built for this pandemic. They were built for the world in general. They're destroying their competition. They're not slowing down anytime soon. And I think the market had it right leading up to the last few weeks where the NASDAQ was just going up, going up, going up. I think there was a stretch where it was up 46 out of 48 days. And then over the last few weeks, it took a big breather. I think people were starting to question whether or not the earnings for Amazon, Facebook, Google, all these big tech stocks would really live up to the way the stocks were trading. And they did. And the stocks blew it out of the water. They the only one that didn't really blow it out of the water was Google. They reported their first decline in revenue year over year, which I thought that was interesting. And it almost seems like because the other tech stocks reported such good earnings, Google almost got a break because they're not really down. They were up a nice amount yesterday. They look like they're going to open down a little bit. But, I mean, Facebook right now, 7% pre-market, which is just amazing. Apple, 7% pre-market, which is also amazing. Google, like I said,
4-to-1 stock split.
Apple did a 4-to-1 stock split. I think that's their way of catering to the retail investors who want stocks that on paper appear cheap. So, you know, if Apple could have their stock in the 2-digit range, it's going to just appeal to a lot more people. So I thought that was interesting. Pinterest this morning, dominant earnings. That's a huge boom for me because I've been big on them and I own them in my long-term portfolio. They're up 35% right now pre-market, which is insane. I mean,
and that's based on user count.
Yeah, they had really good international growth, which this just seems like such an obvious for a couple of reasons. One, their stock was trending in the last few weeks like they were going to have good earnings, but also with everybody cooped up at home and the entire world facing the same thing the United States was facing, people were looking to upgrade their homes. They were looking at Pinterest for new ideas. I've always loved Pinterest. It's a great time killer, and I know we've talked about them a lot on here, but they're killing it. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens today because obviously the big tech stocks having good earnings is lifting up all the other tech stocks with it. You know, you got Etsy, which is up about 4% pre-market. You got JD and Baba, which are up a little bit. Shopify is up nice. Obviously, Penn and DraftKings look like they're back in action. These are just all the movers that I have on my watch list that I'm kind of going over right now. Twitter obviously got a nice little lift from the social media earnings. They're up 2% pre-market. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens today because I think there's no doubt that the economy is still pretty weak, but there's a few companies that are just stealing all the business. They're going to dominate in any atmosphere. And I think yesterday showed us that. And it'll be interesting to see, A, if the NASDAQ kind of gets back into gear, if it goes all the way to new highs, or if today's kind of a little fake out and maybe it almost does what yesterday does where it reverses, where it opens up and it looks like the market's going to go on a tear. And maybe this is really going to turn into a sell-off. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think this is enough for a rally for August.
So do you think it's set a market-wide rally, or do you think this is going to kind of separate the NASDAQ from the Dow?
I think market-wide, personally. I think this sets up, just the way this was. I thought it was going to be a non-event in a good way. Like, I'm obviously pumped. I'm an owner of all those stocks long. I just figured going into this, there had to be some catalyst to set us up for something for the rest of the summer here before the brass tacks of the election really gets going. And I don't see how this doesn't set us up for a great next run for the next few weeks, at least. Like, I'm expecting a very good market today. I'm expecting a very good market next week too. Maybe one down day, but I think people are going to be pleased with the results coming.
Yeah, I think it's the money-making month. I think we'll have to reevaluate at the end of August what you do with some of those. Do you sell some of your shares, put them on the sidelines for a little? My reasoning is, I was thinking last night after all those earnings came out, I was like, where is all this money coming from, right? And we say it all the time. We talk about, these new investors. But when I started digging into like the Twitter universe and digging into like the new amount of Robinhood users compared to E-Trade users, and then start seeing the people that were like tweeting about stocks, and they're just like people that have no idea what they're doing. It's like someone that, works at, a local pizza shop and is just like, hey, I'm going to throw the dart at this stock because it's an Apple, because it's, an affordable stock they could do. And these fractional shares nowadays are going to be a killer in the long run. People are buying 5% of a share through apps like Robinhood to get into Amazon. But the second they see it spike up or they need the money, they're going to sell off.
Yeah, you're dead on, Vaz. The accessibility in the era we're in now to be able to get money into and out of the market, that definitely has a lot to do with this. And with people locked down, they need action. People are trigger happy. We haven't had sports. I know basketball just came back last night, which is why I think you should see some positive movement from DraftKings as long as people stay healthy and continue to play. But, I'm with you. I think this is an all-time, like when we were kids, no one talked about the stock market in our high school. You never thought about that stuff. Now, it's literally like that's all people do.
It was a fear factor. You're like, I have no idea what this is. You
and we are in the FOMO culture, right? Everyone is afraid of missing out more than ever. I think Insta stories has a lot to do with that. But the last thing you want to do is be at a party with friends and hear, I missed the boat on Amazon. What's going on here? I'm not that cool kid that owns stock.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's the new thing these days, right?
Hands down. Everyone's saying they missed the boat on Apple at $7, 15 years ago. And they always talk about that. And it's the same kind of thing, right?
And it's the worst feeling not being like when Dan brought up Pinterest. I've been in and out of that stock. I don't own it right now, but even the inkling, the competitor in me is like, how do I not own that right now? Are you kidding me?
You could be up today, right?
Yeah. And that's the culture we live in.
I think the one thing too, Dan, you brought up a point about like Amazon, right? Like thinking about their meeting with Congress the day before, Amazon's results were exactly what Congress was saying and Bezos was saying wasn't the case, right? Like they're taking on the entire market. What do you guys think about that? Like, what do you think the ultimate play from Congress is going to be specifically with Amazon? I think the apples are played in a good place, but
I think I
don't think they do anything. I think this is all just, they have to play this card of like looking into things and, questioning things they don't understand. I don't think Congress has any idea what they're even doing.
It's all show.
My dad said it best, where Congress is not trying to do anything except show the record books that they ask certain questions when it comes down to re-election time. They don't even know what they're trying to do. They don't even understand the companies that they're trying to ask questions to.
You're not going to know how to be on the internet. Like they don't have Facebook.
You're not going to slow down big cap. I kind of just offer kind of an opposite perspective here. I don't think that August is going to be a month where the market just soars higher. I think if you take away Apple right now, the Dow Jones is down today. It is. Without Apple,
well, Apple's a big part of that.
I mean, no, but it just shows that there's a huge disconnect right now between companies that are doing well and companies that aren't. And the few companies that are doing well, I think are going to be able to take all the companies that aren't under their wing, and just all of a sudden you're going to see this broad market rally. I think you'll see the strong names continue to be strong, but on a day like today, you kind of, like you said, you expect the market to rally big. It's not. The NASDAQ is, because you have big tech coming out. They're coming out with strong earnings. And you have the Dow right now pre-market up 50 points, which is hardly anything.
Well, yeah, Boeing hasn't helped matters. They're a huge indicator of the Dow, and they've just have not been clearly what they used to with all this going on. When you don't have Boeing being able to act like Apple ongoing, it's a laggard. It drags the Dow down.
And also, we've still been stuck completely in this choppy trading range where even today, I mean, it's not like it looks like
that's healthy, Dan. Isn't that a good thing? Then instead of talking about everything at all-time highs.
It is a good thing. Of course, definitely. But today, though, is a day where we will watch the NASDAQ. Everyone's going to watch it closely. And I don't think we're going to see it break through the top part of the resistance level. I think it's going to continue to be in this level. And I think that would be a major problem for the NASDAQ, because if you don't have the big tech earnings that get us above the trend lines we've been in, and that brings me up to my next point, which is the NASDAQ has never been so far above its Bollinger Band since 2000. And I'm not comparing what's going on at all to 2000. The earnings support what's going on. These companies are crushing it. But there's no doubt that the market is rich right now. I mean, the market's been avoiding some big sell-off to get the valuations more in check. And Baz, when you brought up earlier, you're wondering where the money's coming from. The money's coming from the big hedge funds that have missed out on this rally, that are on the sideline, that keep on TV saying how overvalued it is, hoping that it comes down so they can get back in.
Sure.
But when we see these types of moves, it's not retail investors. It's big money that causes the moves. And then the retail investors come in once they see a Pinterest is up 2%. They'll be the ones that buy now, and then when Pinterest is at 25% in 2 hours, they'll sell and they'll lose their money. And the hedge funds are the ones that are waiting for those people to come in that are causing these spikes to begin with. But yeah, I think when you look at the range we're in, I think there's a lot that's unknown right now about where the market goes. I just think it's a coin flip if we finish in the red or the green today, just based on
honestly, my perspective is sell off half of your shares of any tech stock that's not the ones from yesterday, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons, the Apples, even Netflix you could throw in there, Alibaba, like those kind of stocks, and everything else that's just ran up like crazy in the tech sector. Get rid of at least like half of your shares, and then go buy into Boeing, Madison Square Gardens, all the stuff that's kind of down for a long-term play, because the bubble's going to burst at some point. And while it's up at this high, take your wins and go get others while they're low, to be honest.
So give us an example of like a tech stock. Are you talking about like a Fastly, for example?
Yeah, I'm talking about a Fastly. I'm talking about, here, I could pull a couple up in the tech sector.
While you pull those up, I will say, and I agree with what you're saying to an extent, on the other side of it, I've always looked at it, and this is something I wish I was more disciplined with, because I'll go on a run and tell myself this, that you got to ditch your losers. The stocks that are not doing well, just get rid of them. Like whatever. I've been thinking the same. It's actually
I'm about to yank that personally.
Yeah, I think things like Adobe, NVIDIA.
See, NVIDIA. I look at NVIDIA as an anchor. That's like I look at that stock as having way more room to run. Personally,
You think so?
I do. I think they have such an advantage. What?
I know. I agree with Mike. I was saying, I think you want to be careful about selling any winners at all, because I love trimming the winners, but when you think about it,
but yeah, we talked about that last night. The age group has a lot to do with that too, right? I know our father is big on trimming winners, where me and him have always butt heads on that, Baz. I think it depends how old you are and what your strategy is personally.
Sure.
I've lost a lot of money personally off trimming wins in the past that I should have just held on instead of having a short-term capital gain. Because for our viewers, if you trim a win and say you own a stock for less than a year, you owe 40% in taxes.
Terrible.
So if you hold it for at least a year, it's more in the 24% range, which is a huge difference.
Good call.
And I think a lot of that is, and I think a lot of that boils down to your own discipline on the matter. Because here's the thing: if you're going to trim a stock like Apple today, and you're really going to let that money sit on the sidelines, and you're going to wait.
That's not what I would trim. right? That's one.
No,
I'm like, hey, they're doing a
Hold
4-to-1
on.
split.
That means more the volatile tech
Well,
plays.
no, hear me out. I'm using this as an example. If you're going to
Okay.
trim, just say an Apple, call it a Facebook, call it an Amazon. I'm talking about big winner. If you're going to trim them and not sell them, but trim your winners a little bit for dips, which makes sense, you got to at least make sure that then that money is ready for the day Apple is trading under 300, which is going to happen. I don't care what's
400.
No. I'm saying 300. It wouldn't shock me if there's a day.
That's what I'm saying. Why not leave now some of those, and then if you're thinking that's going to happen, buy back in if it's lower.
Well, that's where I'm saying you got to have the discipline to have the money on the sidelines, because I think what a lot of investors
I'm always keeping 25% on the sidelines and making moves every couple days.
See, my attitude there is make more money to put into the market when it dips.
Well,
true.
I think I've been in my head lately. It's like bring in more income to get more into the market.
So you're saying leave your money in and you'll take your outside money into it.
Yeah, 100%.
Love it.
Well, yeah, that's great. If you have enough outside money where that strategy works for a lot of people that are playing the money that they have in the market. I'm more saying I think a lot of people don't have the discipline to sell a stock and then leave their profits for when there's another opportunity. They're quick to find the next opportunity within minutes of selling a stock. So then if you sell Apple, let's say you're selling Apple at, 420, which looks like maybe it'll touch today, and then you're immediately taking that money and you're dumping it into, let's say, a U.S. Foods, which has been a complete dud of a stock, but just as an example. And then in a month from now, if Apple's trading at 320 and you're like, oh man, now's my chance. Like you look at Netflix. Netflix has had a nice dip. Maybe now's a good time to buy in. All of a sudden that cash isn't actually there anymore because you just put it into a stock that.
But then maybe that's a better strategy sometimes as an investor, is putting it to work in another stock. Like when Baz is talking about, say, a Boeing, if you don't own the stock and you're looking for an entry point, say you made a ton of money on a Fastly after yesterday and you're like, okay, I'm ditching this. I want a stock that's more healthy for the long term here. Let me jump on a Boeing in the 165 range.
Yeah.
I mean, it all boils down to the strategy. I think we could all
everyone's different.
Like I read an article yesterday on it was like a day or two ago. Barron wrote an article on like Madison Square Garden, and he's like, now is the time to buy the Madison Square Garden stock. He's like, this is a place that will never stop. It's the mecca.
Is that MSG ticker?
Yeah, it's like about 155, 156 right now. He's like, their target's 220, 230 by end of year, but like that stock was in the 300s prior to Corona.
So Baz, let me ask you something, and Dan too. What are your guys' thoughts on getting into a stock before things are back like that? Are you in the mentality of let me gamble on that before things are back, or do you want to see things actually be back with events? Because I personally, I'm still hesitant to get into any crowd-related things.
The thing is, like, I don't think they're going to go any lower right now because I think people keep thinking like all this money's getting thrown into vaccines, right? So this is the steady pace where these Boeings will stay. They're not going to drop to 130 or 120.
I totally disagree with you. I think there's there's a ton of bankruptcies that are on the verge of happening that will happen, and they haven't yet. And when they do, it's going to really tell the tale of where the market is and which industries are completely screwed and which ones are doing okay. And you're right. A Madison Square Garden long term is not going anywhere. There's going to be a day where people are going to concerts, sporting events, everything at the Madison Square Garden.
When is that long term? When is that?
I don't know. I look at it like I have two different portfolios going on. I have my active day trading portfolio where I would never even think to touch a stock like MGM until there's actually activity going on in it. And then I have my long-term portfolio where now's the time I would look at Boeing or MGM because, maybe it's dead money for a couple of years. But when it comes back, you're going to look back at these periods. And that's where, Mike, when you brought up BP before, I'm in the same boat. I'm looking at BP. It's been a long-term holding of mine for over 5-6 years now. And obviously, the energy got destroyed in March, and it hasn't come back at all. So I'm down 35, 40 grand on my BP position over years when it was one of my best positions up until March. And I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself, okay, BP is a stock where it's tough to imagine there's not a point in my life where BP is going to be in the mid 80s. So I look at it and I'm like, is this a good time to actually double down on BP and have it in my long-term portfolio? It pays a sexy dividend, it's probably not going anywhere, and they're going to stay on top of energy. It's not always going to be oil. Like BP is not going anywhere. Or do I take the loss against my gains from taxes in the upcoming season and put it into something like Netflix or Microsoft, which I'm very confident is going to make all kinds of healthy moves in the near future.
Netflix is doubling at some point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But when you really think about, like, okay, 15 years from now, where do I really feel more comfortable with that long-term money?
BP.
In one of the top energy stocks of all time that's beaten down right now when we know energy, it's not going away. Or Netflix, where it wouldn't be crazy to see a world where we look back at these levels and we're like, damn, remember when Netflix was trading in the 500 when now it's 75 a stock? I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that's where I'm in the same boat as you, Mike, when it comes to the BP. And I think you could tie in a lot of these economy recovery stocks to that, where do you want to ditch them? Take the losses, put them against gains. You're not paying as much tax if you've been crushing it in this recovery. Or when you really think long term, are those stocks really actually duds? Or is this the greatest time ever to double down on them? I don't know.
I think it depends on when you look at the return on your money and the time value. When you look at a BP, even like, yeah, I'm with you. In our lifetime, sure, it could be trading in the $80 range. But at what point are we looking at a stock like that as just a dead weight in your portfolio for the next year and a half, where I'm like, okay, I'm down, say 13, 14 grand on this stock. Let me reduce my taxes and then have more money available for stocks that I know are going to actually make me money in the next few months, which I don't see BP doing.
No, you make a good point, Mike. You'll make more money maybe if you do it right in the next 3 months than you will in the next 10 years on BP.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I get it with the dividend. Dan, you're right. It's important to have those long-term anchors. But when I look at my portfolio, I have a few mutual funds, an ETF, NPSNY, these big tech companies. I'm already long plenty of safe plays. So when I add the BP, that's why I also got rid of Boeing in the mid 180s. I finally was in the green on that. And I'm like, this thing is just dead weight for me. It's not bringing me in enough. So I shifted gears and I'm thinking about doing the same thing with BP. I haven't yet. I'm long 1,000 shares, but my entry point there was at like 35. And, it's tough to just sit with right now.
Maybe just sell half, sell a quarter,
I'm an all or nothing guy, Baz.
Really?
That's my thing. It's tough for me to dabble like that. If I start selling any of it, I'm like, I'm done with this.
I'm in the same boat with you with a few stocks where I've been really trying to have an internal debate as to whether or not, and it's all an ego thing, right? Because at the end of the day, a big part of it's an ego thing. It's tough to really leave the ego aside and be like, okay, I'm going to ditch a losing trade. I'm going to take the loss, even
Not
though
easy.
And even it's crazy that it's not easy because it's the most intelligent thing in the world for multiple reasons. One, a loss is a loss. And if a stock's acting bad, the trend is your friend. It's not going to just turn around overnight. Two, you could take the losses against gains and lower your tax. So in a way, selling it is making you money. And three, you then have that liquidity to use for something that you feel is having its moment right now. So you could sit on the sidelines and look at a stock like Netflix, which has had its dip, and be like, okay, like, everything's telling me that I should probably buy Netflix because this stock's probably going to be over 600 before I snap my fingers. Yeah. Or am I going to sit here for the next 2 years and look at BP every day until one day they finally have some sort of positive oil cutback meeting?
They go up to 25 for a hot second and then dip again.
Yeah, and that's where it's such an ego thing, because when we talk this out loud, like, you got to be an idiot to keep a losing stock. It does nothing for you except to tie up money and make you pay higher.
Well, like you said, high dividends go a long way. It depends on what your game plan is, because
it depends on the stock too. Like a Boeing, airplanes are going to be here forever. They're set up for 10, 20 years in doing that.
And they're a defense stock. That's 50% defense, 50 travel. So
you don't mess
with the U.S. government.
Hands down.
I prefer
when you're in with the government, you're good.
Personally, just off of the fact that they have that divide and conquer mentality.
You prefer
either way, neither company's going anywhere. But I think that brings up a great point on our talk here with our viewers is that sentiment over there's the ego and then there's the, oh, well, what do I do here? A loss is a loss. You can't win everything. And you don't.
Are you the blackjack player that puts it on black, keeps winning, keeps putting it on black, or do you put it 3 times, walk away, and put it on red? Right?
And,
Kind of the same analogy.
And I think everyone struggles with that. So that's a great analogy, Vaz. And everyone struggles with that mentality, I think, in the world where we've all been there. It's like, oh, that's in the stock market. Even I'm sure the best of the best, they'll have a losing position and maybe hold it a bit too long.
Oh, dude, I've sold before, shares of my Apple stock to like buy my house. And I was like 5 years ago at like $90 a share. And I'm like, shit. Could have just rented.
You did that. You had that was purpose driven, right?
Still, but at the same time, it's like, you make those decisions sometimes based on, things you need or a gut instinct that sometimes doesn't go right.
Yeah. It's always, we call Bob Captain Hindsight. It's always easy to be a genius looking at the past.
And that's where, I ultimately will look at a stock like BP and ask myself, what's going to perform better in the next 2 years, a BP or a Netflix? And I'm pretty sure I have the answer to that, but I then don't actually make the move to support my answer, which is let's sell BP. Let's look at that big red loss at the top of my day trading portfolio or my trading portfolio for the day. And
you already balanced that out with wins.
I've been a big, I've never owned Netflix, but I was bringing it up yesterday. Their content, I don't know what you guys think. I watch a lot of this stuff on Amazon, Netflix. I keep tabs on it. I think Amazon has just leveled up on another stratosphere with their content.
Yeah, Amazon's shows are amazing.
They really are on a whole nother planet. Like, I think they're so much better. I've been rarely on Netflix. I don't even.
The only thing is Netflix has enough content for the next 5 years.
We could all create shows and send them to Netflix. I watched an Indian matchmaker show on there the other day. That's when I knew it was time to go outside and walk around. They have everything on.
Let's also keep in mind that Netflix has been in somewhat of a production hall along with these other companies for about 6 months now. So
if they have stuff from overseas, they're good for a while. Let's do stocks for the day.
That applies all over the world. Like they definitely not been able to do what they normally do. And if the world was normal, there's probably a lot of pieces of content that were supposed to come out of Netflix that were either rushed or didn't just because.
But even the Irishman movie, the amount they pay to just get one movie, I'm not really liking that.
And it wasn't even great.
Yeah. Like, I don't think that model is sustainable for them at all or will help their stock long term.
I mean, I think Apple's the better play because when you look at Apple TV, you look at the
Apple TV shows are great.
There's another great play.
Their exclusivity with the shows that they have, the movies that they had. They just the Tom Hanks movie. They have their own Netflix, but then it's Apple and it's got everything else.
Eric's fiance Lisa says productions are starting back up. She's in the casting world, so that's interesting to see. Thanks for that, Eric.
I mean, look,
consumer spending jumps 5.6% in June, just reported.
There's certain pieces of subscriptions that people pay that they're just not going to stop paying. And in my opinion, Netflix falls into that. And that's where I love them because people aren't going to stop paying Netflix. There's always going to be a show.
Yeah.
And there's a show on Netflix that everyone likes. They're always going to come out with their next season. Netflix is going to continue to increase their price. They're probably going to make a play in the gaming industry. Like, it wouldn't shock me if they bought like a Take-Two or an Activision or something that allows them to then have that whole thing as a part of their platform too. And Netflix is just such a winner, but it kind of goes back to what I was saying where, again, I look at a stock like BP or I look at a stock like US Foods or I could throw a few other and I ask myself what's going to perform better in the next 6 months.
Dan, what's your stock of the day here? We got to wrap this up.
I mean, this is going to be a massive day trading day for me. I sold some Pinterest pre-market here when it was up 35%, up more. I mean, I'm going to be following the volume, and I think I'm going to be actively day trading. Like, you already had over 8 million shares of Pinterest get traded today. It's one of the highest volume stocks on there.
Day trading stock.
Yeah, it's a great day trading stock. I don't really have the levels identified yet, just based on what's happening right now. But
keep me posted on that. I'll jump on that bandwagon.
Today is going to be a great day if you're into day trading. If you're not, don't mess around with it. But you're going to have massive volume with all these tech stocks because the earnings yesterday. They're going to be all over the place. There will be runs. There will be points of the day where it looks like they're giving it all back. And you'll ultimately have to decide reloading periods or shorting opportunities. Because again, I'm not convinced that this market doesn't want to completely fold up even after the earnings.
Yeah, and you've been very bearish in talk, but in action, you've been bullish.
Bullish, yeah.
It's interesting.
That's not necessarily true. A lot of my daily actions have been day trading by shorting stocks, and I'm doing great with that. And part of the reason I'm doing that is because I look at it like when you're day trading, you could either short or go long. And if you're short, you're at least positioning yourself where if the market wants to take an absolute shit midday, all of a sudden you're in a bunch of shorts. Whereas I don't see the opposite happening. I just can't picture.
See, I play the opposite approach with day trading. I pick times where I'll wait for a stock to hit its low point and try to really time that around a bubble and then get in and let it ride for a bit and then ditch it.
I think we're in an atmosphere where at any moment the market, if it really wanted, could really give up some serious gains where we go from the Dow being up 55 points to down 1,000 in the scope of 30 minutes. It's that type of atmosphere. Look, that's why we're in that atmosphere. A lot of people don't see it.
Well, I think you're just scared of March. And it's from, we've had a couple of these holy shit moments over the last few years. I don't see that happening again in 2020.
I mean, stocks are definitely overvalued. The VIX hasn't come down at all. It's kind of charted in a way where it looks like it wants to have another breakout. There's a lot of signs that point to some sort of sell-off at some point. Yesterday seemed like a fake out. I don't know. What's your stock of the day, though?
Guys, what are you liking?
I got two. I got Coca-Cola, a huge Topo Chico fan. I like that they're going into the hard seltzer world. I think once people get a sip of what Topo Chico tastes like with the alcohol beverage form, it's through the moon. And then I think the other stock is going to be PayPal. I think Venmo is unstoppable. I think it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon.
They hit all-time highs yesterday, PayPal.
I saw that. I think wait for a little dip today. Buy in. I think that stock gets to 300 within the next year.
That thing, you can't go wrong on PayPal long term. I mean,
not at all.
PayPal gets to 300 by the end of the year. The stock was at 60
by next year. Next year, some point.
300. Wow. Maybe I should just throw the that.
Well, I mean, it's ingrained in everything, and I also feel like every time I talk to someone, people don't want to give cash anymore.
See, that's why I love Square too.
Venmo. Yeah, Square Cash App too.
I love PayPal. I think there's a day in the next 2 months where you could pick it up at 150. That's my prediction.
Yeah, true.
So let's see what happens today. It's gonna be a big day.
I'm gonna be looking at Twitter today and riding. I'm gonna try to day trade Twitter today. Get back in it and ride some momentum there.
It's a good day trading stuff.
I'm taking a boat out today. So I'll be hopefully doing some stuff from the boat. But if there's ever a day where Twitter better get into gear, it's today because this is
happening. Dan, you should be doing day trading from the boat live.
I agree.
Live stream your day trading on the boat.
Problem is when I'm on the boat, it's all phone. When I'm doing it from a computer, I got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I have way more success from my phone. The way I am, like on the go with the blood flowing, I make way better decisions.
Yeah, it's better on the phone.
I feel naked from my phone because I don't have like the RSI info and things that really tell me what's actually going on.
You can do that.
Yeah, you do.
On the side.
I got to figure that out. I haven't been able to do it.
I'll show you. That's actually, I figured that out last week. It's game changing.
The best moves are made when you're on the toilet. Come on.
100%, Vaz. Well, guys, make some money. This has been great, Vaz. Thanks for coming on again.
Of course, we'll see you guys soon. Take care, guys.
BX fucking ripped today. Sorry.
It's going to rip. ABIO.